Welcome to the Season 1 overview of this charmed man. So, we have reached the end of Season 1 of Charmed, and it's actually occurred to me that I'm not sure I've ever properly and formally introduced myself to my audience. So, my name is Colin, this is my channel, the Yay Nay or Meh channel, and this is This Charmed Man, which is a series of first-time reaction videos to the TV series Charmed. And following the demise of my previous crappy camera, which included but was not limited to the fact that the second half of my episode 22 review just completely vanished, I have got myself some new equipment, including a new camera. And with the new equipment, I now have a stable way of shooting head on. So no longer will I have the profile thing. From now on, you will be getting the face on attitude. And I've also indulged myself with some gear, because this is the album art, or the single art, to This Charmed Man by The Smiths. And once again, a quick reminder that the Smiths rule and the version that is used for the theme tune of Charmed is not the best version in any stretch of the imagination. But yes, once I came up with the title This Charmed Man, I couldn't resist. But anyway, here we are at the end of Season 1. And I was kind of planning to take a little bit of time off and regroup, have maybe some more comments, maybe some more observations from my viewers come in before I started on to Season 2. But then I did some quick maths and I realised that this project of reacting to all episodes of Charmed, both the original series and the 2018 reboot, it's going to take me about 5 years. So I better get on with it. So, as things stand, and as I'm recording this, I still have a couple of episodes yet to be released on YouTube, so I haven't got a full list of comments from the final, I think it's 3 episodes I haven't yet released, or 4. But I'm recording this early, and I'm planning to release this overview kind of midweek between the Tuesday where I release episode 22 of Season 1 and the Tuesday where I release episode 1 of Season 2. So hopefully this is going to be released on the Saturday in between, and I can continue on my 5-year odyssey of doing these reactions. But I did want to do this video. I did want to give you some overviews, some insights into my opinions on Season 1. And mostly that is in 3 specific strands. 3 things I want to comment on, bothered me a little bit about Season 1. And that is the treatment of Andy, the treatment of Rex and Hannah, and the treatment and the definition of witchcraft, or witches and warlocks. So I'm going to go in depth into those 3 categories. I'm also including a section which I'm calling Potpourri, a grab bag of little random observations and comments, just little clips or shorter edited packages, just random thoughts which occurred to me along the way. And I'm going to close this episode with what I'm calling the Charmed Bingo card. Or actually, I suppose technically it's Charmed Bingo cards. Because it's occurred to me that there are certain tropes which get used over and over again in this type of fantasy genre TV show, and we haven't had many of them yet, or at least not all of them. So I've put together a list of things which might show up in future episodes of Charmed, not only obvious tropes, but also individuals and types of character from season 1, which I think possibly will show up in future seasons. So we're going to go through that and see how successful I am going forward. So yes, this is probably going to be a long show, and lots of thoughts, lots of analysis and observations about season 1 of Charmed, which I hope you will appreciate. And without further ado, let's get on with some discussion of issues I had with season 1 of Charmed. So I do have an issue with the portrayal of Andy, particularly in the second half of the series. And I do like the way that the relationship between Prue and Andy started. I mean, they slept together in episode 2. And then did the will they, won't they thing. I mean, is this serious? Can we rekindle what we had in high school? All that kind of stuff. But there was always the secrecy and lies. And eventually, Andy had had enough. And by episode 7, he broke up with Prue seemingly for good. And that was followed by the double whammy of under the influence of the truth spell saying, I can't handle you being a witch. So that double whammy of episode 7 and 8 put the relationship between Andy and Prue on a very, very different path.
All I know is there's nothing more I can say or do to reassure you that I'm there for you.
Andy. Are you saying that you don't want to see me anymore?
I don't know what I want anymore.
I need to know now. Can you or can you not accept that I'm a witch?
If I have to answer right now, I don't think so, Prue.
And following those 2 episodes, between episode 9 and episode 19, where they're broken up, and then in episode 19 he finally finds out the truth, kind of, which I'll be getting onto in a minute. But between episodes 9 and 19, the relationship between Andy and Prue vacillated wildly between friendly, sometimes even flirtatious, and occasionally outright antagonistic and bordering on violence. Depending on what the story needed at the time, it was always up for debate what Andy's relationship with Prue would be. Sometimes, in fact, quite often, in the same episode, both aspects of this relationship were put forward. You know, the good side and the bad side. I mean, there was such a spectrum in those 10 episodes.
Ciao.
A man fell out Prue's office window, which is suspicious enough. But then a man matching the same description went and killed a lawyer down the street. A lawyer named Hallilow. Now I know she knows who he is. One more time, Phoebe. Where's your sister?
Where's your warrant?
You're gonna wake a judge up at this hour? Are you nuts?
Getting an arrest warrant, Morris. End of discussion.
Based on what? Whoa. Stealing a feather? He will bust your rank. You will be cleaning up parking meters for a living.
So I should just let it go, is that it? What about Prue's evading arrest? Am I supposed to let that go too?
Damn right.
She didn't do it, Morris.
You keep saying that.
It's too bad. It's too easy. The evidence just keeps falling in our laps.
Maybe her sister was right. Maybe your personal feelings are getting in the way.
We've had that conversation, okay? Prue, listen, just because we're not dating anymore, I want you to know I still care about you. So if you're ever in a jam or you ever need anything, just know you can always call me. Prue, Phoebe.
Andy, thanks for calling us.
Please, she's like my sister, too. She's in here. Wish I could think of a logical reason to explain why Prue's involved in this.
You mean this time or every other time?
Prue, 5 women your age have been scared to death since midnight. Now we show up, we hear you screaming, we break in, find you terrified in the shower.
I told you I had soap in my eyes.
That wasn't pain on your face, that was fear. You're not gonna tell me anything, are you? One day, I'm gonna figure out your secret, Prue. Count on it.
Andy, what's going on?
Everything's fine. There was an incident involving the gas man who was checking your house. Got a little rough with Piper. Prue, remember a few months ago we ordered tickets to the Bay Area Music Awards? They came in the mail. I thought you might want them.
That is so sweet.
And you can take anyone you want. Even an old boyfriend who's just a friend now, but who loves good music.
Andy, it's 4 in the morning.
This isn't a social call, Prue. I need you to come with me.
Where to?
City Morgue. I'll drive.
Andy.
Hey, Prue, you feeling lucky? Because I'm here to do you a big favor. I'm going to forget that I can place you at the scene of a crime if you tell me where I can find Brendan Rowe.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about justice for Father Austin.
Hi. Still mad at me?
Listen, Prue, I'm sorry about how I acted earlier. We've been down this road too many times, Prue. I know you're hiding something. I have my suspicions about what it is, but I've had to accept the fact that you can't tell me, or you don't want to tell me.
And then in episode 19, finally, Andy finds out the truth.
Andy! You okay?
Yeah. Thanks. So what Loman saw you do was true.
Although it is interesting that looking through all these episodes, when Prue and Andy are not under the power of that truth spell in episode 8, Prue never says the words on screen to Andy, "I am a witch," which I thought was actually kind of interesting. But anyway, after that big revelation in episode 19, things can develop. Except that several episodes earlier in episode 12, the Wendigo episode, it had already been done. And it had been done off screen.
By the way, what did you tell him about why we were all there?
I told him the truth. Get out! I did. I said that what he saw happen was true, that Agent Fallon really was the Wendigo, and that had we not vanquished her, that both he and Piper would have been killed. I couldn't think of anything else to say.
Well, what did he say?
Not much. He was either too stunned to speak, or he actually believed me on some level.
And the more I think about it, the more that little sequence at the end of the Wendigo episode really, really pisses me off. Because this is a huge revelation. Andy has been told and seemingly has believed that there are supernatural things going on. And that's 7 full episodes before he is finally aware of the truth. So why is it at the end of episode 12? I think the simple answer is the writers wrote themselves into a corner. There was no way of getting out of the Wendigo episode without that thing happening, or at least no easy way. So they just went with it. They wrote themselves into a corner and they had to go with it. And that's actually not the first time that has happened. I mean, another quick clip I wanted to play was during episode 6, where the writers also wrote themselves into a corner with Andy.
It's just two women talking. You can't even hear them.
What, you don't read lips?
Something killing a priest wasn't part of our deal.
Damn. You're good.
They had to get Andy to that wedding so suddenly he can read lips. But anyway, the biggest thing I have an issue with is the huge tonal shift between episodes 9 and 10. In episode 9, Andy is very aggressive, very gung-ho, wants to wake up a judge and arrest Prue for stealing a feather. And then in episode 10, despite the fact that to all intents and purposes there is absolute evidence that Prue is a thief and a murderer, yet Andy says no, she can't possibly have done it. So in episode 9, he wants to arrest her for stealing a feather. And then in episode 10, despite the fact there is very, very good evidence that she's a thief and a murderer, he doesn't want to arrest her. And that's one episode. So what's the point here? The vacillation between I am your friend, I am probably still in love with you, to I want to arrest you, I need you off the streets. In one episode, it doesn't happen. So, yeah, this really, really annoyed me. And the fact that T.W. King wanted to leave the show, or was fired by the producers, or was fired by Shannon Doherty, depending on which story you believe. However it happened, T.W. King ended the series at season 1. And this means that there was really only one episode where Andy was a full participant in the group, in the narrative. And that was Love Hurts, episode 21, which honestly I think is my favourite episode. For that reason, I mean, this was the one time that Andy was actually a member of the team and actually helped the sisters.
I'm glad I told you. I am.
So am I. Now when you need me, all you have to do is ask.
Well, I am asking. I need to find someone. She's in danger, and I have to get to her before he does.
He? You know what? I don't need to know. Specifics always get me into trouble.
You can't run from me!
Easy!
What the hell was that?
Welcome to my world.
But as well as that, we had Leo finally being exposed as a white lighter, which is a stupid name still, and Piper finally admitting she loves Leo, and the fact that the A-plot is a very good parallel to the real-life issue of a coercive controlling relationship with this dark lighter controlling this woman Daisy. So, yeah, I mean, the real-life parallels, the Piper and Leo relationship, and the fact that Andy was, the police side of the Supernatural Sisters investigation. That was all great. So yeah, I think Love Hurts is probably my favourite episode of season 1. But yeah, and that's all we're ever going to get. Unless Zombie Andy shows up in season 2, which I'm not fully ruling out the possibility of, but probably not. So this is all we're going to get. And I still find it frustrating, and part of it is the fact that T.W. King left after season 1, for whatever reason, who knows. But it does feel unfinished, and it also feels a little bit rushed. And I do have a little bit of an issue with that. And the vast swings of emotion that Andy went through the second half of season 1. But that's not nearly as bad as the unfinished business we have elsewhere in season. So, doing a bit of research on this subject, it appears that Rex and Hannah were only ever intended to be an arc for the first 10 episodes. The way television used to work, particularly in the 1990s, was you had an order of a small number of episodes, say 10 episodes, and if it was a success, then you would fill out the rest of the season and you would get renewed for the second half of season 1. And that's what happened with Charmed. There was an initial order of 10 episodes, and if it wasn't picked up, the makers of Charmed, Brad Kern and Constance M. Burge, wanted to have a complete unit in these first 10 episodes. So that was all that Rex and Hannah were ever intended to be. But even if you accept that starting point, accept that basic premise, this was not handled well at all, in my opinion. The first time we see Rex and Hannah together, it's during the job interview with Prue. And it goes in an interesting direction.
Watch out! Well, what do you think?
I think either she's the luckiest woman alive, or she's a witch.
So that comment from Hannah, either she's the luckiest woman alive or she's a witch, can be taken a couple of different ways. Either, this is somebody supernatural in front of us, or, oh, that was weird, isn't that unusual? And this is a common trope throughout a lot of the interactions that we as an audience get to see between Rex and Hannah. There are these coy, understated moments which you can take several ways. Are they really evil? Are they really after Prue or not? You can go many different directions, and everything is really, really understated. But there are things which gradually lead you to the conclusion that Rex and Hannah are A, probably evil, and B, probably demonic. And there are little hints here and there throughout the first half of the season.
That's very careless of you. You should know for whom we acquired this.
Look, her sister's catering the wedding. But Prue won't even be there.
Don't pout, Hannah. I'm sure we'll think of something to do. Yeah, perhaps we could go to a football match and watch some players get injured. Hey. Stop worrying, Hannah. Gonna get wrinkles on your horns.
And that last one, yes, it starts to really solidify for the audience that maybe these are, demons from hell. But it doesn't really make sense when later it's revealed that essentially Hannah's a panther.
Love you too, darling.
So it's been gradually built up for the audience that maybe this is, a warlock and or demon from hell. So when it's basically confirmed, again, it is in such a throwaway, such an offhanded, such a casual way that this aspect is confirmed.
Go to hell.
Yeah, I'd love to, darling. I miss it terribly.
So there's been hints, there's been suggestions here and there that Rex and Hannah are demonic for the audience. But crucially, not for the characters on screen. Despite the fact there was ample opportunity. Firstly, we have that statue we briefly saw earlier.
Hey, I know that piece is from the auction house.
And yes, it's unusual. Oh, look, that's something that I just seen at the auction house. Isn't that strange? And then you forget about it completely. But surely there must be a tiny bit of Prue and maybe the other sisters who said, hang on, these creatures from hell, I mean Hecate, this demon witch goddess, or witch demon, whatever she is, she has this statue which was recently in the possession of Rex and Hannah. That's unusual, maybe there's something there. I mean, surely a tiny hint that something's going on from the characters on screen. But no, it's like, oh, that's weird, and move on. And then we have the situation with Melinda Warren's locket.
Rex.
Ah, good morning, Prue. I've left a few things for you to catalogue. A marvellous shipment from an estate back east.
I'll get right on it.
Thanks.
Now, to be fair, that is not suspicious in and of itself. Presumably, Rex has been bringing many things to Prue to be appraised, and this one happens to be cursed and happens to be directly related to her family. So it's not suspicious really in and of itself, but combined with the fact that very recently you had that fertility statue and the demon goddess Hecate, those things combined, surely you should have red flags going off in Prue's mind. Maybe the people I'm working for are not on the up and up. Surely you should be thinking that, but yet we have none of that. So those are a couple of things actually on screen in the plot of the series, which, in my opinion, should start Prue, at least, suspecting that something is up. And the writers of the TV show Charmed also had opportunities to push this further and didn't take them. When everybody who talks to Prue is under a truth spell, she has two interactions with Hannah, and what comes out of Hannah's mouth is the kind of thing that a bitchy co-worker would say, not necessarily a demon from hell who wants Prue dead.
Don't you hate turkey?
Of course I do. I just don't want you to have it.
Is there any particular reason why you're such a bitch to me?
Yes, because it's my mission in life to destroy you. Prue, about what I said earlier,
Now isn't a good time.
I just wanted to say I'm sorry.
But you wouldn't really mean that, would you?
No.
There was ample opportunity for the writers to push that agenda even further. And the upshot of this is, in my opinion, that by the time we reach episode 10, where the shit hits the fan, the audience has been given hints that something wrong, something even demonic is happening with Rex and Hannah. But crucially, the characters on screen, Prue and the other Halliwell sisters, they haven't got a clue what's going on. So suddenly Rex is evil. That's how it plays out. And you could have built this up. You could have gradually revealed stuff. Instead of having these, coy asides and lines which might even have been improvised, which just give you hints that something is going on, and eventually it's revealed to be demonic. All of that could have been built up much more strongly, and it isn't. Neither for the audience nor for the characters on screen. They just did not do enough to establish things before the shit hits the fan in Wicker Envy in episode 10. And let's get onto that, because what was the plan? Your goal is to get the sisters to relinquish their powers. Specifically saying that there's a spell in the Book of Shadows.
All the better to frame her and force the sisters to relinquish their powers.
How do you know they even can?
There is a special spell in the Book of Shadows. When the time comes, they'll use it.
Where only an episode or two previously you said you weren't even sure whether they were witches at all.
I thought that went exceedingly well, didn't you?
You may have proven the legend of the locket true. And that the little witch is charmed.
So suddenly you're completely aware of what's in the Book of Shadows? Okay, let's go with that, but your plan, therefore, in order to get the sisters to give up their powers, is to frame Prue for theft and eventually murder, to seduce Phoebe simply so there will be a witness to Prue committing murder. I mean, that's so convoluted. I mean, this whole plan is so convoluted. Whatever happened to Occam's razor? I mean, the simplest solution is the best. I mean, this is way too complicated, way too convoluted. What is the pathway? What is the direction that gets you from let's frame Prue for theft and or murder to they will eventually relinquish their powers? Well, there's no direct pathway there, and yet that's the plan. So what are we doing here? And then there's also really, really fascinating things in the background where Rex and Hannah seem to be working for somebody else. And by the end of the episode, it seems that Rodriguez and Tempest are also potentially working for somebody else. And that's, hints and things for future series, for future episodes. But again, that's not really dealt with, not really built up enough. There's only a couple of mentions here and there of the agenda behind this plan, this bizarre and convoluted plan. But there is somebody working behind the scenes.
What do we do now?
I don't know. We're going to have to think of something faster. He's going to be none too pleased to learn that we have failed.
Wasn't a complete failure, right? I mean, we outed them. Proved they're the charmed ones, and that has to count.
It'll buy us a little bit of time, but precious little.
You should have listened to me, Rex. We should have taken care of them ourselves. But it was my fault. I didn't fail! They did! No! Please, no!
So all of this happens, and then Rex and Hannah are dispatched off. And then, in retrospect, in the next episode, when Claire shows up, it makes it even worse.
I'm looking for inventory records. The files in my predecessor's office were empty.
Yes, well, Rex and Hannah weren't exactly qualified.
So not only have Rex and Hannah, in my opinion, been doing a piss-poor job of trying to get Prue to relinquish her powers, they also haven't been doing the jobs they're supposed to be doing for the people they took the bodies from. How have they managed to keep that going for so long if they're not doing any of the paperwork, if they're just bankrupting this auction house? Why did nobody notice? Why did nobody raise red flags? This was so poorly handled on several levels. I think there wasn't enough build-up to the eventual plan. Prue didn't even know that there was anything suspicious about them when she should have done on a couple of different occasions. The plan itself, when they put it into action, was so convoluted and so twisted that what was the point? I mean, going into the situation, that was your plan, really? In so many different ways, Rex and Hannah were completely misused in season 1, and we're probably not going to see them again. I mean, I think there's scope. I mean, Rex seems to be dead, if a demon and or warlock or whatever he is. I mean, and what even is he? And I'll be talking about that in the next section, but Rex seems to be dead or whatever the term is. Hannah isn't. It'll be interesting to see Hannah try and come back, but I don't think she will. But I've been sent back to hell, and now I come back to get vengeance. You made me kill my partner, lover, husband, something, and now I will take vengeance on you. But we're probably never ever going to see it, which is disappointing. And the whole Rex and Hannah saga is disappointing. I can accept the fact that Rex and Hannah were only ever going to be in 10 episodes. I can live with that, that's fine. But those 10 episodes, they didn't actually handle the story or the characters well at all, in my opinion. And ultimately, I think that was really, really disappointing, the way that Rex and Hannah were dealt with.
It all feels a little anticlimactic, don't you think? Too easy, almost. Feels as if we need a more satisfying ending.
When you have a TV show about witchcraft, and in common with many TV shows and films and whatever about witchcraft, your villains, your enemies are known as warlocks, it should be relatively easy to say what is a witch, what is a warlock, what is good, what is evil, is gender involved at all. That should be easy to answer. But in season 1 of Charmed, it really, really isn't. So the place we start from in Charmed episode 1, season 1, is Phoebe discovering the Book of Shadows and essentially being Basil exposition for big chunks of episode 1. And the way she explains it...
Before Melinda was burned at the stake, she vowed that each generation of Warren witches would become stronger and stronger, culminating in the arrival of 3 sisters. Now, these sisters would be the most powerful witches the world has ever known. They're good witches, and I think we're those sisters.
It is implied, although not admittedly outright stated, that it is the female line, it is the women of the Warren/Halliwell family who have magical powers. And this idea of women being witches, ergo a man will be a warlock, is confirmed from a couple of other interactions throughout the course of the season.
The craft is a chick thing, Prue. It's passed on down through the female line. There's a good chance Dad doesn't even know we're charmed.
And there's just as good of a chance he does.
Does this mean that Piper and Phoebe are...
Yeah. We inherited our powers from Mom and Grams.
So when you have kids...
If they're girls, yes.
So we are led to believe that woman equals witch, and witch equals good. But then we get Max, and that just throws a complete spanner in the works. Because he is a male witch, and because Leo shows up to help him, he's a potentially good witch.
See, Max is a budding good witch, new to the powers. But he's very young and vulnerable. And he's in serious trouble. Someone wants to take advantage of his gift.
So why don't you help him?
I did.
But the fact remains, he inherited his witch powers from his mother, who was also a witch. So in this family, the mother can pass on her powers to her son.
Usually the demons that I have to deal with...
Demons?
Your mom didn't get a chance to tell you much about being a witch, did she?
No. I just found out about my power when she died.
So where does that leave us? Because until this point, we've been led to believe that it's only women who can be witches, it's only women who can be good magic practitioners. So where does Max fit in? Is this something that is specific to the Warren Halliwell line, where in that family it is only the women who get magic powers? And if that is the case, A, how do they know that? And B, why don't we as an audience know that? Make it specific, saying in this family it's only the women who are witches, rather than making a generality about the entire universe of magic, because that was the impression that I got, that in the whole world, in the whole magical realm, it is only women who could be witches, and witches are always good. That was the impression that was strongly suggested to us in the interactions of the first half of season 1. So with Max, we have this idea that a man, can be a witch, which seems to break its own rules. And tangentially, and not necessarily connected to this particular discussion, but there's also the situation of Daisy, who is a female white lighter, and that also seemed to be a gendered status in the magical realm. So what's going on there as well? But that's another discussion for another day. Max seemingly breaks the rules, as does the other witch we spend a great deal of time with, and that is Aviva. Now, Aviva is introduced as if she is a witch, and is accepted as such.
I'm not leaving. Don't you understand? I'm one of you. No! Very cool.
Wait, you didn't freeze.
It's because I'm a witch too.
The fact that she doesn't freeze is obviously used later to help her out, and that is also a trait of witches, which is used later in the season as well, or at least referenced later in the series as well. Witches don't freeze.
Piper, that's it! Freeze her! Aviva doesn't freeze! Yeah, but Kali will. No!
She's frozen. Good. No. Remember, our powers don't work on good witches. Oh, that means we've lost her.
So as far as we're concerned, Aviva is a witch. And yet, by the end of the episode, seemingly, she's lost her powers.
I'm really gonna miss being a witch, having powers, and having sisters.
And looking back at that clip, I think there's a chance that that dialogue was ADR, it was recorded later. So they specifically wanted Aviva not to have powers by the end of the episode. And I really don't understand why, because honestly, I think Aviva would be a great character to come back with, and I'll be talking a little bit about that later. But if she is a witch and she passes the test, she's a woman, she doesn't freeze, she has powers, she has the fire powers, then how come she doesn't have her powers at the end of the episode? I think, in my head canon, is it the fact that Callie, the sorceress or demon or warlock or whatever she was in the mirror, gave her powers to Aviva, and she was therefore masquerading as a witch? But if that was the case, why didn't she freeze? Because she wasn't technically a witch, she was just using witch's powers, and therefore Callie shouldn't have frozen either. But yeah, I mean, there's stuff there, but is it Callie's power which Aviva is using, and therefore once Callie is gone, the powers have gone also? I guess that kind of makes sense, but it's really not explained well in the episode, and it also explains a little inconsistency which I spotted when I was rewatching episode 1, picking out the clips to do this video. If Leo is a white lighter and therefore helps out good witches in need, how come he did fuck all about Aviva? They met each other. Leo knew that Aviva was there. Presumably, on some level, he knew that she was a magic practitioner. Why didn't he do anything? But who knows? I mean, most of what we have with Aviva is fine. I mean, it fits in with the rules of the show. I mean, and every show has its own rules. And for the most part, Aviva does abide by those rules, except for the fact that she doesn't have her powers by the end of the episode. How and why did that happen? That I'm really, really unclear about. And also during this episode, we have other issues as well. I mean, for the first time in the series, we have the idea of a bad witch, a bad female witch, a bad female magic practitioner, even potentially a female warlock.
Phoebe, for all we know, she's a warlock. She can't be. She didn't freeze.
Besides, she said she was a witch.
Okay, a bad witch, maybe.
Yeah, a bad witch with a really cool power. Better than mine, that's for sure.
And yes, the Halliwell sisters are very new in their power, and maybe they're using the wrong terminology, maybe they don't know what they're talking about. But Patty and Grams, who do know what they're talking about, also suggest the idea of female warlocks in later episodes.
3 women, warlocks, and one of them was taking Prue.
Warlocks, be gone!
So that implies strongly that there is such a thing as a female warlock, and there are enough of a threat that you need to be wary of. Which doesn't quite fit in with the way that warlocks are introduced into this series as well. Because, again, Phoebe being Basil Exposition in episode 1, her explanation of warlocks doesn't quite fit.
A bad witch or a warlock has but one goal: to kill good witches and obtain their powers. Unfortunately, they look like regular people. They could be anyone, anywhere.
So from that, we have the idea that a bad witch is a warlock. There doesn't really seem to be any suggestion of a demon entity. There doesn't seem to be any suggestion of not being human. They're just bad people who practice magic. And yes, in that first episode, we have Jeremy, who in a couple of different places doesn't appear human.
It's you, isn't it? You killed all those women.
Not women, witches.
Why?
It was the only way to get their powers.
And now I want yours.
But in my mind, and I think maybe in other people's minds as well as they're watching this for the first time, you can easily brush those incidents aside. The first one, he is a magic practitioner who's just trying to frighten Piper by messing about with his face. And the second time I read it, that he was having those thorns come out of him because Piper had put the rose thorns into the poppet, into the little clay maquette. So the rose went into the poppet, and therefore the rose came out of Jeremy. That's the way that I read it. I didn't read it that that's what Jeremy actually looks like, because he is a warlock, ergo he is a demon. And gradually throughout the course of the show, you have more and more suggestions that warlock equals demon.
Jeremy and his aftermath. You know, you slept with him.
Don't ever mention that warlock's name again. It is over. He's in demon hell. End of story.
What's the vaccine for? What does it protect against?
Against me, of course. And all other warlocks like me.
Which obviously culminates in Brendan. And at this point, all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I did not see the directions that Warlocks would go in with Brendan. I mean, with the full-on facial transformations and the idea that Warlocks are essentially a different species.
A warlock naturally comes from two warlock parents like Greg and Paul do, but they're just my half-brothers. I had a different mother.
A human mother?
Yes, a wonderfully human mother.
So then we have something in common. My father was human.
And it should also be noted that that thing also suggests that witches are a different species. You know, Prue saying, my father was a human. So does that technically make her a half-witch, and therefore is a witch different from a human, different from a warlock? That seems to be what that's suggesting, but it is really not made clear. So, yeah, I mean, the idea that interbreeding between humans and witches and warlocks is possible. I mean, and there's different things, and in particularly the case of warlocks, there's, you know, visible transformations which happen. But is a warlock a demon? Is a demon a warlock? Are those terms interchangeable? They certainly could be, and that also happens when you are going back to the previous section, when you're talking about Rex and Hannah. Because it is basically clearly stated, or more or less clearly stated, by the end of Wicked Envy, that Rex and Hannah are demons from hell. And yet, they are also described as warlocks.
What a strange time this is. So open, yet so closed. Where even a warlock feels shame.
It must have been an illusion, all of it. Even my premonition.
How is that possible?
Mind control, astral projection, throwing charms, who knows?
Prue was right about Rex.
Which means I'm dating a warlock.
Been there, done that.
The last thing we have to worry about is the legal system. We're up against a warlock now.
True, if Prue's right about Hannah.
Exactly, which means we have to figure out what they want. It can't just be to frame Prue.
Unless in doing so, somehow they think they can get our powers, which is what warlocks want.
And again, you can brush off those instances if you want to. I mean, the first one, Hannah clearly has other things on her mind, so it's not her highest priority to correct Matthew saying, no, I'm not a warlock, I'm a demon. And the other two, the Halliwell sisters, they don't know any better. They've only just come into their powers. They don't know what a warlock or a demon is. So maybe they're just getting it wrong. Maybe they're just using their terms incorrectly. But the fact is that Rex and Hannah are described by the main characters as warlocks, and there's a chance that maybe they're not. And I think it is really, really unclear. What is a witch? What is a warlock? What is a demon? Are they interchangeable? What is the status of all of these things? Are they completely different from humans? What is happening? I should know. By the end of season 1, I think I should have firm answers to these questions, and I don't. All of this says that there's really no definition. I've said it before on previous episodes of this, that I don't think this show had a hard and fast Bible, what's known as a show Bible. These are the things which are true in this universe we are creating. These are the things you must abide by. I really don't think Charmed had that. And they're just making stuff up as they go along and throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. And it gets messy. Now, I hope that in future seasons we will have a more rigidly and a more strongly defined definition of witch, warlock, and demon, and the differences and nuances between those. But right now we don't have that. I hope we will look back on season 1 and say, oh, in a later season that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have done that. But I'm honestly really, really confused about these definitions. And yes, we'll have to see how that develops in future series. So yes, that is the last of my lengthy discussions for this episode. And now a quick section which I'm calling a potpourri. I mean, is potpourri even a thing still? Do people know what potpourri is? But that was the term that came to mind. I mean, both of my grandmothers had potpourri bowls in their living room. But yeah, a medley, a potpourri, a selection of random thoughts and observations which I have, which don't make enough for a full section, but I just wanted to make comment on. So here is the potpourri section. So yes, this is just a selection of random thoughts and shorter video packages which don't deserve their own section. For example, what denomination are the sisters anyway? Because firstly, they're doing charity work with a pastor, and later in the series they're doing charity work with a father, a Catholic priest. So are they Protestant? Are they Catholic? What are they? I mean, they're clearly religious, but because Piper was so concerned about going into a church when she thought she was a witch. So they seem to be religious, but what denomination are they? Doesn't really make a difference, but it's odd that they would do charity work with both a Protestant church and a Catholic church. Seriously, who thought this was appropriate professional wear for a catering engagement? It's kind of weird that this was the only time that Leo and Andy ever actually met in person. Please tell me that there is some reason for this statue to exist. Yes, we needed to demonstrate that 3 Prues together could lift it when 1 Prue couldn't. But if that's the only reason this huge Roman marble statue is in the Halliwell Manor, please tell me it's haunted or cursed or something, because if it's only for that one reason, then you could have done so much better than just gigantic Roman marble statue. And when looking through the entirety of the first season, I spotted a continuity error, which bothered me a little bit.
Whoa! Where did you come from?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Don't ask. Okay, we gotta go fast. Mom just left and Grams is...
Prudence. Piper.
Coming.
I want to go too.
No, Andy, you have to stay here.
No!
Okay, we got it.
Little Andy Trudeau is so cute.
All right. Ready?
Freeze him.
I think we can all agree with Piper that little cowboy Andy is very, very cute. But if that clip is true, then this one from earlier in the season no longer makes any sense.
Shit.
goes, okay. So he leans in when he gives you a kiss. Right on the cheek.
Hi.
Prue.
I tried calling the station house for you. They said that you would probably be here. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, Prue, this is,
Susan Trudeau. Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Trudeau. Sister?
No, actually.
Wife.
Ex-wife.
Because if Prue had known Andy for that long since they were children, she would know that Andy doesn't have a sister. So yeah, that's something that needed to be sorted out. And also, the fact that we only ever saw Andy's ex-wife in that one scene, that's a missed opportunity. I think we could have had a lot of dramatic potential with Andy's ex-wife showing up periodically, but that's beside the point. And then another, I wouldn't call it a continuity error, but a missed opportunity I spotted, is related to the very good episode Dead Man Dating with John Cho, and the interactions that Piper and Mark, I think it was, had when Mark was a ghost.
Ever make a Peking duck?
No. You?
It's a piece of cake. Mom told me I could have been a great chef if I hadn't sold out to the molecular biology program at Stanford.
So you could make Peking duck and clone DNA.
The duck's harder.
What are they?
My grandfather's recipes. My dad translated them when I was born. They've been serving these in my family's restaurant for decades. They're yours.
But they belong in your family.
I want you to have them for everything you've done for me. I just ask one favor. Use them for your sister's surprise birthday party.
So the first missed opportunity is that Piper didn't make Peking duck for Prue's birthday, which I thought she was going to do. I mean, those two clips suggest that Piper was going to make Peking duck for Prue's birthday, and she didn't. Which I can understand. I mean, it wasn't really enough time in the episode to do it. I mean, as it was, they went straight from a funeral to a birthday celebration, which is weird. So yeah, they didn't have time to do it then. But later in the series, there was a specific gag involving cooking duck.
Anyone hungry?
Well, what do we have here?
Duck medallion. Sans medallions.
Prue?
So if you are going to have that business with the duck, have it be duck medallions instead of Peking duck. I mean, yes, it wouldn't be the most obvious thing to have Peking duck at a dinner party as a starter, but it would have kind of made sense, and it would have been a nice nod to the fans who watched episode 4 or whatever it was, Dead Man Dating. It should have been Peking duck. If you're going to do a gag with a duck, make it Peking duck and have the reference to the earlier episode. So yeah, a missed opportunity there. And that's the end of the really short thoughts and observations I have. And now some brief pre-prepared montages which have other things on their mind. So in this segment, I want to make it absolutely clear that I don't object to the monsters or the villains disappearing without a trace. I grew up on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and right from the beginning of that show, the vampires just disappeared into dust, and everything was fine. What I object to, or not object to, but I made note of in Charmed, is the fact that the physical evidence of the monsters and the villains also disappeared along with them. And that, for my money, was very, very convenient. And here are a few examples.
window? Who cares as long as it's not here? Where's your dog?
He's, retired.
I love it when they clean up after themselves. I can move. Why can't I move?
Because I'm going to love you to death.
No! Please! Save it! For another lifetime! You're frozen! In fear!
Come on. Give it to me.
Where's her soul? Where's her magic?
I've been trapped! She has none. Whoever this is, it's not the real witch.
Our fairy souls, they're everyone I can get my little hands on, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna get your little hands on this one, lady, so just forget it.
Don't worry, Jackson. I don't want your soul. I want a witch's. They're prize catchers. Trophies.
Will you excuse me for 1 minute? I'll be right back.
Well, I think it's a good idea. Great. And I think it's a bad idea.
Well, you're not handcuffed. That's a good sign.
Internal Affairs is looking into all my unsolved cases.
Jeremy Burns, San Francisco Chronicle. You care to comment?
He's the
A
killer.
woman was stabbed.
He's the killer. He has to be the killer.
Well, that's the third one in 3 weeks.
Somebody like that, a reporter just showing up and being too interested in it. I've watched way too many television shows and movies. That journalist, he's the killer. I'm betting right now. So as I was going through season 1, I started realising just how many standard tropes and standard monsters were showing up in the series. And it started being a little bit of a game for me to try and predict the kinds of episodes we would eventually going to get. And I was having enough fun with that I decided to formalise this somewhat. And before I start watching season 2, I have created a list of ideas and tropes that potentially could show up at some point in the rest of Charmed as a series. And I've also put together a list of individuals who I anticipate showing up as well. So, yes, let's see how many of these I actually hit on. There are 3 categories in my trope bingo card, and each of them has a list of 10 entries, which I potentially might be ticking off. We have a trope of the monster of the week. We have a trope of a specific film or book. And we have a third category for more general tropes, the kind of things which tend to show up in TV shows the longer they go on. So in the first list, the most obvious classic monster, which we haven't done yet, is vampire. And there's probably a good reason for that, and Charmed itself knows what that reason is.
I hate cemeteries at night.
I hate cemeteries at day.
What was that?
Probably a zombie or a vampire.
Great. Where's Buffy when you need her?
So yeah, why do vampires when the other show's doing it at the same time? But I still anticipate vampires of some description to show up at some point. Another classic monster, which we haven't done yet, is Frankenstein. You know, the Frankenstein monster, somebody being constructed from different types of body parts put together and reanimated. Haven't done that yet. Why we haven't done the Invisible Man yet, I don't know. That's a very obvious one. As is zombies, particularly in the modern day. Now, when you say zombie to a modern audience member, they are probably thinking about the George Romero type of zombie, the shuffling, shambling undead who is just after brains and has no other purpose, no other function. That's what a zombie basically means. But the true definition of a zombie is a corpse which has been reanimated through voodoo. That is the traditional and the specific version of a zombie. And I think there's a chance we'll see both of them. So the George Romero zombie, which is technically, more accurately, a ghoul, is one entry on the list, and the voodoo zombie is another entry on the list. And the last really, really obvious, universal monster that we haven't had yet is the creature from the Black Lagoon. At some point, I think we're going to have a fish man. I mean, that's a very obvious one. And since I wanted a list of 10, the last few on this list are less likely, but I still think have a chance of showing up. The first of which is Jekyll and Hyde, and this one straddles the line between classic movie monster and a trope on a specific book, because, Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so is it based on the book or is it a movie monster in and of itself? I've decided it's a movie monster, but you could make an argument either way, and there's other ones in the list of specific tropes which I'm straddling that line as well. I think we have a chance of having a djinn as well, or a genie. An entity or something, or a demon or a warlock or something, which grants wishes. But wishes that turn out to be more trouble than they're worth. I mean, the irony of twisting what you want, be careful what you wish for. So I think a genie, something which grants wishes, which then turn out badly for the person involved. I think that's a strong possibility. Charmed is a series which is set in Northern California. Why not have Sasquatch? It's something that could potentially show up. I mean, why not? I'm putting it on the list. And the final thing I'm putting on the movie monster list is the incubus and the succubus. Oh, yeah, incubus and or succubus. A sex demon. Something which sucks out your life force, sucks out your soul through sex. I mean, does a Darkside count? Well, no, I'm putting that aside. But yes, an incubus or a succubus. I mean, I think Charmed is already a show which has some surprisingly sexual lines and some surprisingly sexual situations.
Hey, I forgot your question.
I asked if Prue would have sex with someone other than herself this year.
That's disgusting.
Please say yes.
Don't worry. We had safe sex. A lot of safe sex.
Ew.
Frozen. Quick, have your way with him.
Here.
Where did you get the... Never mind.
Well, you're not handcuffed. That's a good sign.
Depends on who's cuffing you. She used her power to take away his sword. I guess Gabriel is trying to earn his abilities back.
Great, so some guy couldn't keep it in his sheath and now I'm marked for death.
Well, some men can be very sensitive about their weapons.
Lords of War and their weapons are supposed to be inseparable, like Thor and his hammer.
So honestly, I think it's only one step further to have, an actual demon which feeds on sex. So at some point, incubus and or succubus, I think that might show up. So the second list is films based on a specific film or a specific book or something. I mean, we've already had the Groundhog Day episode, we've already had the Terminator episode, and here is a list of other classic films and books which potentially could show up. I mean, basically every television show in history has eventually had a Die Hard episode, and I'm sure that Charmed will eventually do that. I mean, you can only hold off for so long. And similarly, many TV shows have a Rashomon episode. I don't know how well known Rashomon is, but it's a brilliant film. But if you had to, gun to my head, what is my favourite film ever? My answer would be Rashomon. Japanese film from 1950. I've got a Rashomon t-shirt somewhere, but Rashomon is a story which the same sequence of events is told from 3 different perspectives, and they're all radically different from each other. I mean, the fallibility of memory, the fallibility of humanity. I mean, making yourself look better. This is actually what happened, and I'm making myself look good. But the same story told from 3 different perspectives, and they're radically different from each other, or multiple perspectives, and they're radically different from each other. That is the Rashomon episode. There's a couple of Christmas movies, or Christmas entities, which they often have episodes based around. Firstly, It's a Wonderful Life. The idea of, if you weren't born, this is what the world would be like. That is very common. I think there's a large amount of scope for that to be part of Charmed. And similarly, A Christmas Carol. The idea of spirits showing you the past, present and future. I mean, not necessarily at Christmas, but since it's A Christmas Carol, maybe it will show up at Christmas. But here is what you have done, here is what you are doing, here is where you're going, and now you need to change your ways. I think that trope is very, very common in TV and film. There's a couple of John Carpenter films which I think are very likely to be parodied or pastiched. You have The Thing, which wasn't originally John Carpenter, but John Carpenter's is the most famous version. But The Thing trope, in my mind, is a group of people in a small enclosed location. They cannot leave, and paranoia starts taking over. And that is The Thing, or Treasures of the Sierra Madre, or whatever you want to call it. The idea of people together, paranoid, and start fighting with each other. And then you have Assault on Precinct 13, which again, John Carpenter didn't originate, but his is the most famous version. The idea, again, of group of people in a small enclosed location, and there are people surrounding us, and they want to get in. And we are a small group of people defending our place against vast hordes outside. So yes, I think that's another one which has a strong chance of showing up. Being that, to some degree, Charmed is a horror series, I think there are a couple of Stephen King adaptations which are potentially on the way. I think you could very easily do a Charmed version of Carrie, which I think to some degree we've already done a little bit with Aviva, but I think the idea of a repressed teenager completely letting loose and having to be controlled, maybe through telekinesis, maybe through other means, but the idea of a teenager bursting out and causing chaos. And the other one I've put on the list is a little less obvious, but I think you could do a really, really good Charmed episode based on Stephen King's Needful Things, which is maybe not one of his more famous books, but I think you can do that. I mean, the idea of somebody, maybe the devil, opening a shop and people coming in and you buy something which you want or what you need, and it goes badly, and the intentions within your heart, within your soul, corrupt everything around you, and everything goes to shit because you have been tempted by this shop owner. I think there's a chance that you could do a version in Charmed of Needful Things. I mean, they've basically already done it with Out of Sight. I mean, there were so many references to it in that. But yeah, I think both Carrie and Needful Things are chances for that. And going back to more classic literature, these are the other two which I think straddle the line between, is it a classic movie monster or is it an adaptation of a famous novel? And that is Phantom of the Opera and The Picture of Dorian Gray. In both cases, I think the book or the adaptations of the book are more well known than the monster itself. But I think in The Picture of Dorian Gray, the idea of a painting aging and the person who owns the painting not aging, and being some kind of deal with the devil or whatever, I think that's a very strong possibility. I can easily see a Charmed episode doing that. And also Phantom of the Opera. I mean, I think I've put it on the list because it is a classic of horror literature, and to some degree it is a classic movie monster as well. I'm honestly not sure how you would do Phantom of the Opera in the Charmed universe, but I think it's a well enough known trope that I've put it on the list. I think there's a chance it will show up. And then we have a list of more general tropes, a list of overarching tropes. And the first few are actually kind of variations on the same theme, which is alternative realities. I mean, the first entry on my list is alternate reality, but there are different types, there are different flavours of alternate reality, which also have their own entries on the list. The first one is the alternate timeline, which, similarly to the It's a Wonderful Life trope, doing something differently, go back in time and changing one little thing, and that goes off in a radically different direction. I mean, can be extreme, something like Ray Bradbury's The Sound of Thunder, step on a butterfly and everybody can't read once you get back, or something relatively minor but still tragic. So, changing one little thing and branching off into a new alternate timeline, that could be interesting. Another version of the alternate reality story, which is somewhat common, is the trope which I've called "you're hallucinating." And that is the idea that the world of the show, which we have been seeing, is all going on in the mind of one of the characters. And a doctor or a psychiatrist has to convince our character, no, what you have been experiencing, this show you've been part of, is not reality. You are a mental patient in a psych ward and you're hallucinating. I mean, obviously, speaking as a Buffy fan, the best example of this type of film or episode is Normal Again from Buffy, but other shows have done similar kinds of things. The idea that what we as an audience have been seeing is not reality, it's just the hallucinations of one of the characters. So yes, the "you're hallucinating" trope is on the list as well. And also another alternate reality, alternate history version, which often happens, is Visit to the Future. Somehow we go far into the future and see the consequences of our actions and, oh no, this is a disaster, how do we stop it? Or how do we make this happen? But seeing something in the vast, far-off future, I think that's a chance of something. But although there's a chance that won't be until the very, very end of the series, episode 7 or whatever it is. But it's on the list. I mean, that often happens. Another trope which happens a lot, evil twin. Again, why we haven't had an evil twin episode, I do not know, but we surely we're going to have an evil twin episode at some point. There's another trope which is reasonably common, although not necessarily very widely accepted, and it's the trope that I'm calling Ghost All Along. An episode where the characters are interacting with somebody, and it's only at the end of the episode that they, as the protagonists and or us as the audience realise that the person they've been interacting with this whole episode hasn't actually been there. They're a ghost or a figment of the imagination or a hallucination or something. But somebody who has been a character throughout the entire episode wasn't actually there. And you go back and look and, oh, nobody actually ever talked to that person. It was only our protagonist who talked to that person. That is a reasonably common trope, and I think there's a strong chance that that's going to be a Charmed episode. There's also a less common trope, but I have seen it done several times. A trope which I've called Woke Up Bloody. Now, this is an episode where at the start of the episode, somebody wakes up, one of our main characters wakes up, it's like woozy, what the hell happened the night before, head pounding, whatever. Look down, they're covered in blood. And often in the bed next to them is a bloody corpse. And oh shit, what did I do last night? I can't remember. I've seen that episode done so many times on so many different shows, and I think there's a chance you could do a Charmed episode of Woke Up Bloody. And then the last 3 episodes on this list are types of formal episodes, where the format of the show is different. And they often do this in different types of TV show. And Charmed could well join that list. I mean, TV shows often have an episode where it is a documentary format, where a documentary crew is filming our protagonist. I mean, I think that's less likely in Charmed, but I'm putting it on the list. They often have a singing episode. Obviously, Once More with Feeling is the classic example of that. And they often have an animated episode. And I am including puppets, like the Angel episode Smile Time. So sometimes they have a documentary episode, a singing episode, or an animated episode, just to break up the format. So those are more format type tropes, which potentially could show up on Charmed as well. So there we have it. That is the 30 strong list, the Charmed trope bingo card. And if and when any of those tropes does show up in an episode, I will be crossing them off this list. And we'll see how many I've crossed off by the end of season 2. And I'm presumably going to do something similar to this episode at the end of season 2. So we'll see how many have been crossed off the list and maybe add some different ones on, some other tropes which I didn't think of could be added to the list as well. And that is the trope bingo card. And I've also instituted a bingo card for individuals, or at least characters or character types, which potentially could show up again. And these fit into 2 categories. Firstly, we have family members, because I think there's no chance in hell we are not going to see Patty, Grams, Victor, or Melinda again. I'm also adding Brianna, who was mentioned in the Which Prue Is It Anyway episode, who defeated the Lords of War back in the day. I mean, now that she's been named and now we have seen at least the picture of her in the Book of Shadows, I think there's a chance we're going to see Brianna at some point. And the other 5 people on this list are types of villains which I anticipate could show up again. We have 2 specific individuals in the Shadow / the Woogie Man, whatever he's going to be called. I think there's a chance he'll show up again. I also think there's a really strong chance that Tempest will show up again, simply for the fact that David Carradine is a big enough guest actor that getting him back would be a coup. And then I think there's other types of villains which could show up again, although maybe not the specific actors again. I think we will probably see Darklighters again. I think we'll probably see Soul Collectors again. And I think there's a reasonable chance we'll see the Lords of War again. I think that's the type of villain which could make a recurring visit. And I didn't put on the list a list of people who, in my mind, are in the category of people who probably should show up again, but won't. And the first on that list is Roger. I really don't think that obnoxious prick got enough comeuppance. I really wanted to see him back and really suffer for what he did to Prue. I mean, I'm not bothered about the chef with a shitty accent. I mean, I can take or leave him. But Roger, I really wanted to inflict pain on him, and we're probably never going to see him again, and that's disappointing. And then we have both Aviva and Max. Two characters who have similar kinds of things, in that they are both younger witches. Or is Aviva even a witch anymore? I mean, that is really, really up in the air, which I've talked about earlier. But both Aviva and Max are younger people who in need of mentorship, or family even, or friendship. And I think that kind of dynamic would be very, very interesting. So maybe having Aviva and Max come back and check in with them. Maybe, I mean, not a recurring thing, but sort of see every season or so, oh, what's Aviva doing at the moment? What's Max doing at the moment? Is there anything we can do to help? That would be nice, but I really, really don't think either Aviva or Max is going to show up again. As I mentioned briefly already, I think Hannah, there's scope there for her coming back because she doesn't seem to be dead or whatever a demon/warlock does. There's a chance she could come back, but I really don't think she will. And Brendan is, again, an interesting character. I mean, what happens next for him? I mean, an ex-warlock who's now a priest? That potentially could be a really, really fascinating character. So, yeah, apart from the fact that Michael Weatherly was off doing NCIS, that would have been interesting having Brendan come back. So, yes, that's a brief list of people who maybe should come back or could come back, but won't. And yeah, I think that's how this breakdown and overview of season 1 ends. I mean, I'm probably going to start recording season 2 pretty quickly and see how that goes and carry on into the future. Same pattern as before. Every Tuesday, I mean, Monday midnight into Tuesday morning, that's when my UK time, that is when my schedule is. So yeah, look out probably in the next few weeks as I continue on this very long 5-year journey. And yeah, I've set myself up for something here, and let's see how it goes. But yeah, for right now, I think
greetings from the Darkside. You are welcome here. It has come to our attention that certain acolytes have been casting aspersions about the entity known as Kit, saying that it is not evil. Well, I am here to tell you, these many acolytes, Nini, Calvin Kamalo, and particularly the acolyte known as Vinduka, that Kit is one of us, has been one of us for some time now, and continues to do the bidding of evil.
Our poor cat's in hell.
Go away, horny tomcats.